picking my favorite actress in adult films. Number 1, Sandra Oh, In today's video, I will raise a very serious problem of humanity, which is the root of most difficulties in life of both men and women. Many people do not pay much attention to it, taking it for granted, not suspecting that it is because of this, their physical and mental health, relationships, and all life is falling apart. I guarantee you that in this video you will learn things that no one else will tell you, because it's not something you can talk about, and after watching this video your life will change to before and after.
In this world, is the destiny of mankind controlled by some transcendental entity or law?
What motivates us to do all kinds of things: get up in the morning, eat, exercise, and seek out opposite-sex relationships. It's all about dopamine. Dopamine is a hormone of reward and motivation, anticipation of results. Do you want to start business? You get dopamine. Do you go to the workout? You get dopamine. You see a delicious meal? You get dopamine. And you get dopamine when you're eating this food too. All I listed above gives us a normal dose of dopamine. But there is an action for which the body produces a huge dose of dopamine, and that is reproduction. Reproduction is necessary for the movement of evolution and gene transfer, which is why there is such a strong stimulation of the reward system. It has always been this way. This mechanism is perfect. Through the time, the strongest individuals have struggled to pass on their genes. There has been a rapid acceleration of civilization, but everything changed with the advent of porn. The porn is watched a huge number of people. The data says that between 92 to 98% of all men and 58 and 91% of all women between the age of 18 to 25 watching porn. That's as far as adult is concerned. But the worst part is the children also watch porn. In 208, the number of boys under 13 who watching porn systematically was 11%, but in 2017 that number went to 70%. According to other data, 40% of all children watching porn every day. If nothing is done in a couple of decades, there will be no healthy people in our population. Sex is our main biological task, and as I say above, there is much more dopamine produced for this task than for searching for food or any other activity. This effect is very similar to drugs. Only they can compare the effect of the sex. Drugs work with the same mechanisms as a sexual stimulus seeking. It's such a harsh effect that some animals will willing to produce indefinitely if provided with many females. This pattern was given in one sexual act in mind. But what about many in a row? I mean, this outburst happening over and over again. I also mentioned it in this video. Interesting fact. Our grandfather never seen as naked many women in his entire life, as we can see searching by 15 minutes porn site. Can you imagine what our brain thinking in that moment? It's thinking that it is a jackpot win, that all these women will be yours and you have children with them. The brain don't know the difference between the imaginary and what is real, and for every new woman it sees, it releases dopamine. A study was conducted on rats. A fertile female was placed in a cage with a fertile male, and the rat immediately jumped on her, but after the intercourse, he lost interest in her. He was given another female and observed the same effect, and no matter how many times they gave them females, the effect was the same. He even forgot about food and water. The rat will impregnate females until he's absolutely exhausted and dies. The same things happens with porn, but more about that next. Porn addiction, like any other addiction, have four main brain states. First is sensibilization, creation of certain triggers. For example, you are used to the fact that as soon as you stay at home alone, you can watch porn and masturbate. And there is a fixation of this action. Every time you stay home alone, you always will be thinking about watching porn. Just like drug addicts, as a side of a series, there is an urge to inject. The trigger can be anything. There have been studies where young people were taught on get aroused by a can of coins, and it worked. They were simply shown a pornographic video, and a jar of coins was replaced next to it, and after a long time, even without the video, they were aroused by looking at a jar. Second, desensitization. For example, before you can be aroused by a picture of a naked breast of a girl, but with time it is not enough. You need more sensations, so the addict increases the dose and the frequency of use. This also applies to narcotic substances. There are people who watch porn 10 hours a week and look not at women's breasts, but a hardcore BDSM porn, which will throw more drugs into their bloodstream. They need a greater response from the nervous system. The same decrease in pleasure applies to everyday life. While watching porn, you have a hyperstimulation of the whole body. You against this background other things can no longer fascinate. You lose your motivation and desire to socialize, get acquainted, and lose your desire for goals.
Third, dysfunction of the prefrontal cortex. This is the area of brain responsible for social behavior, personality manifestations, and self-control.
It is this area of the brain that suffers the most damage, namely the areas responsible for it: motivation and commitment to goals, awareness of physical and emotional well-being, self-control, body awareness, self-awareness. One study found that there is a percentage of people who watch porn and masturbate in the workplace or an educational institution. Just think about it.
Fourth, disruption of the stress system. For the addicted person, his addictions allows him to relieve stress. For example, the smoker reflexively searches for a cigarette in a stressful situation. The alcoholic comes home and gets drunk. It's exactly the same with the porn addict.
The next section should be about sexual deviance, but I think it's too much for YouTube. I will try to censor it as much as I can. Please read the full guide in description.
Sexual deviation. This section is closely related to desensitization. It is precise because of decrease in pleasure that a person seeks out more and more sophisticated videos and photos. At first, a person might be aroused by a simply erotic photo, but if a person sees this in front of him very often, he will no longer have a high dopamine responsible to it. Dopamine response decrease and something more sophisticated is needed. And so for many years, as mentioned earlier, many children from age 13 were already exposed to pornography on a daily basis.
And so year after year, the decrease in pleasure is increasing. The dopamine receptors become less and less sensitive, and eventually it gets to the point where a person is watching the ultimate, baddest gangbang, BDSM, zoophilia, and the like. But even that not enough. In general, men are getting to the point where they start to like porn with trannies, and the gay porn in general. This is the final, but that's not all. Because of his constant ejaculations, the man's hormonal balance changes, and he becomes similar to a woman's. This is one of the reasons why there are so many femboys on the internet now. The result is that the man wants to be fucked.
There were Native American tribes that uses the mechanism of ultra-destroyment. After a battle, the strongest warrior of an enemy tribe will be taken prisoner and forced to ejaculate enormous numbers of times, and he will go from a brave warrior to effeminate creature who had a desire to use it by a man. Pornhub shows annual statistic of what genre of porn is most often watched and what they think in the recent years. It's cuckold. The number one genre is cuckold. Who don't know, it's a man watches a woman being fucked in front of his eyes while he masturbating. Why is it so? It's not correct question. Correct question is, what is porn?
Brains do not distinguish between the imaginary and the actual. You're watching a woman being fucked in front of your eyes, and you're jerking off at the same time. Your brain imagines it's all right in front of you, not on the screen, but in your room. This kind of things really lowers a man's rank. How would your great-grandfather look at you, seeing what you do? How would your descendants look at you? How would your son look at you? After reading my guide that I posted on Discord and putting it into action, a lot of guys didn't even realize how they could watch what they watched before.
Consequences. An addict is unhappy on all levels. Pornography interferes in every structure of your life, your reality. Pornography, it's not some just abstract addiction. Yeah, I look in pornography sometimes, but it's no big deal. It's harmless stuff. No, it changes the structure of your brain and turns you into a twitchy, impulsive, inadequate, apathetic, depressive, self-destructive, porn addicted with a low self-esteem who has lost all contact with reality. And now imagine society of such people. It's zombie apocalypse.
And as far as male health is concerned, I'm not talking about that at all, but people who regularly watch porn and masturbate just can't get it up for real women. Yes, there are a lot of stories of forums like NoFap where guys say that after years of watching porn and masturbation, there was no reaction when they were intimate with a real girl, and 15 studies on the subject.
If a young man removes pornography from his life, however, his erectile dysfunction disappears. Prostatitis and adenoma prostate. of all, this very correlates with the frequency of masturbation and watching pornography. If you don't stop watching porn each time you watch harder and more disgusting videos, your brain will react less and less. As a result, your sexual preferences will change radically to the point where your PP will not work. Congratulations, you have laid a millions years of evolution and all your invisible wheel of the altar of watching porn. If your great-grandfather see this, what you're doing, he will put an axe between your eyebrows. Without a second thought, porn addiction is not an individual problem. It's destroying a fundament of our society, our lives. The worst thing is that porn is accessible and destigmatized. The idea of it in society is softened and not considered that something bad. Pornography turns us into godless, antisocial, weak, depressive slaves with a not functional PP. Porn is a war of annihilation with your right to exercise your will, because the porn addict simply has no will of his own. It's time to break shackles of this addiction, because if we don't, our descendants will not forgive it. Join the Discord channel and subscribe to the Patreon. That was Nick. Bye.